The music was a velvet trap, and she was willingly caught. She was a nobody, a shadow in a borrowed dress, but tonight, at the Somerset masquerade, she was anonymous. When the tall stranger in the wolf's mask bowed, she took his hand. He didn't dance like a gentleman. He danced like a storm. His hand on her waist was firm, proprietary. He leaned in, his voice a low vibration against her ear. "I have been searching for you." She laughed, a breathless, foolish sound. She had no idea how true his words were. She had no idea that this one dance would be the end of her life and the beginning of another. Rosamond Finch should have been at home, mending her mistress's torn lace by candlelight. Instead, she stood beneath the glittering chandeliers of Lord Somerset's ballroom, her reflection flickering across the marble floor like a ghost. She was there not as a guest, but as an impostor, companion to the daring Lady Beatrice, who had insisted they borrow invitations to the most coveted event of the 1888 London season, the Venetian masquerade. Surrounded by perfume, laughter, and the shimmer of silks, Rosamond felt both thrilled and terrified. For one stolen night, she wasn't a servant hidden in the shadows, but a woman standing in the light. Yet as the orchestra swelled, and her gaze caught that of a masked stranger watching from the staircase, she understood a dangerous truth. Borrowed worlds never come without a price. "No one will ever know, Ros," Beatrice had chirped, adjusting her own elaborate butterfly mask. "We shall be phantoms." But Rosamond felt agonizingly real. Her dress, a deep rose damask, was a cast-off from Beatrice, altered by her own needle. Her mask was a simple black domino, her brown hair pinned up in a style she'd copied from a society page. She was a sparrow trying to pass as a peacock. She kept to the shadows, sipping watered-down champagne and marveling at the sheer, unapologetic wealth. The air was thick with hothouse flowers and expensive perfume. Then she saw him. He wasn't the most elaborately dressed. He wore a simple, elegant black mask shaped like a wolf's visage, his evening wear tailored to perfection by a master, perhaps even Mr. Poole of Savile Row. But he commanded the room. He wasn't dancing, he was observing. And then his gaze found hers. Rosamond's instinct was to bolt. She was trespassing, she was a fraud, but his stare held her fast. He crossed the floor with a predator's grace, ignoring the fluttering fans of titled ladies. He stopped before her and bowed. "My lady," he said. His voice was deep, textured, like aged whiskey. "I am not a lady, sir," Rosamond replied, her voice trembling slightly. It was a foolish, honest mistake. The wolf mask tilted. "Are you not?" A slow smile touched his lips, visible beneath the mask. "Then you are the most compelling commoner in all of London." He held out a gloved hand. "Dance with me." She shouldn't have. It was madness, but she did. He pulled her onto the floor, and the world dissolved. He didn't dance the waltz with the polite, required distance. He held her close, his hand a scorching brand on the small of her back. She could smell the faint, clean scent of bergamot and starch. He moved with a devastating confidence, leading her through the intricate steps as if they had done this 1,000 times. "Who are you?" she whispered, breathless. "I am the man who has been searching for you," he murmured against her temple. "You don't know me." "I know that face. I would know it anywhere." The words chilled her. The waltz ended. He didn't release her. "I must go," she insisted, pulling away. The panic was suddenly very real. This was a game she was not equipped to play. "The night is not over," he said, his voice a soft command. "It is for me." She turned and fled, pushing through the laughing, masked crowds. She didn't stop until she was out of the ballroom, down the grand staircase, and in the servants' corridor Beatrice had shown her. She retrieved her drab wool cloak, threw it over the rose damask, and slipped out a side door into the cold October night. She hurried down the cobbled mews, her heart hammering. She was a fool. What had she been thinking? She reached the main street, gaslit and shrouded in a damp fog, and looked for a cab. A dark brougham carriage, sleek and unmarked, was waiting by the curb. As she passed it, the door swung open. Before she could scream, a large hand clamped a sweet-smelling cloth over her mouth and nose. Her knees buckled. The last thing she saw was the silver gleam of a signet ring on the man's little finger. Then darkness consumed her. She awoke with a gasp. Her head throbbed. She wasn't in her tiny attic room at Lady Beatrice's townhouse. She was in a bed so vast and soft, she felt like she was drowning in linen and down. The room was breathtaking. Gilded ceilings, silk-panelled walls, and a fireplace large enough to stand in. She scrambled out of the bed, her heart seizing. She was still in the rose damask dress. The door was unlocked. She crept out into a magnificent hallway, lined with portraits of stern-looking ancestors. She descended a sweeping marble staircase, her hand trembling on the polished banister. She entered a vast library. Books lined the walls from floor to ceiling, and standing by the fireplace, one hand resting on the mantel, was a man. He was dressed in a pristine smoking jacket of midnight blue velvet. He was tall, impossibly handsome in a severe, angular way, with dark hair and eyes the colour of a winter sky. He was the wolf from the ball, but he wore no mask now. "Good morning," he said, his voice the same intoxicating rumble. "I trust you slept well." "Where am I?" Rosamond demanded, her voice betraying her terror. "Who are you? You abducted me." "I did." He showed no remorse. "My name is Alistair Blackwood. I am the Duke of Ashworth, and you, my dear, are my fiancée." Rosamond stared at him. "I think you are mad. I am no one's fiancée. I am a lady's companion. My name is Rosamond Finch." The Duke smiled, a cold, thin expression. "Your name is irrelevant. Your face, however, is everything." He gestured to a large, oil-painted portrait above the fireplace. Rosamond stepped closer, her blood turning to ice. The woman in the portrait was her. It was her face, her eyes, her hair, her mouth, the set of her chin, the small mole just below her left ear. It was her. But she was dressed in priceless jewels and a gown of iridescent silk, her expression timid and sad. "That," the Duke said, "is Lady Genevieve Warren, my betrothed, and she has been missing for 3 weeks." Rosamond's breath hitched. She pressed a hand to her chest, her mind reeling. This is a trick, a painting. It's impossible." "It is, I assure you, very possible," Alistair said, his voice devoid of warmth. He moved from the fireplace to a large mahogany desk, picking up a silver-framed photograph. He held it out to her. It was a daguerreotype, stark and clear. The same woman from the portrait, her face identical to Rosamond's, stood beside a stern-looking older couple. "Lady Genevieve is my fiancée," the Duke explained, his tone all business. "Our engagement was arranged by our fathers years ago. It is not a love match. It is a contract upon which the entire future of my estate depends." He began to pace, his hands clasped behind his back. "The Ashworth entail is archaic, a relic of a spiteful ancestor. It stipulates that I must be married by my 30th birthday, which is in 4 weeks. And not just to anyone. To a daughter of the Warren line. To Lady Genevieve. If I fail, my holdings, the mines in Wales, the lands in Scotland, this very house, are forfeit. They revert to the Crown, only to be snapped up by my creditors. And your greatest creditor," Rosamond whispered, remembering the society gossip she'd read to Lady Beatrice. "Is Lord Harrington." Alistair's head snapped up. His blue eyes were sharp. "You are well informed. He's your rival. Everyone knows it." "He's more than a rival. He's a vulture. He has been buying up my family's debts for years, waiting for this clause to activate. He wants to see Ashworth crumble." The Duke stopped pacing and fixed her with an intense stare. 3 weeks ago, Lady Genevieve vanished from her family's country home. No note, no trace. Just gone. "So you saw me at the ball." "My agents have been scouring London for weeks, looking for any trace of her. One of them spotted you in Hyde Park with your employer 2 days ago. He thought he'd found her. He followed you. He learned your name. He discovered you were attending the Somerset ball. His confession was chillingly calm. I went last night to see for myself. The dance was a confirmation. You move differently than she did. You speak differently. But that face, God, that face, it is identical in every conceivable way." "I am not her," Rosamond cried, frantic. "I am Rosamond Finch. My father was an artist. He died 2 years ago. I have been a companion ever since. I have references. I don't care if you were raised by wolves," he snapped. "I care only about what the world sees, and they will see Lady Genevieve." He came to stand directly in front of her. He was much taller than her, a monolith of power and privilege. "Here is my proposition, Miss Finch. You will become Lady Genevieve. You will live in this house. You will learn her habits, her history, her signature. You will stand beside me at the altar in 4 weeks. You will be my wife in name, and in name only." Rosamond recoiled. "You are insane! I will not! I will scream! I'll go to the police!" "And tell them what?" he countered, his voice dangerously soft. "That a duke abducted you? Who will believe you? A penniless companion who was, I might add, trespassing at the Somerset ball? I'll simply say you are my fiancé, suffering from a nervous breakdown. That you have delusions. You will be locked in an asylum before luncheon." Her blood ran cold. He was right. She had no power, no allies. She was trapped. "After the wedding," he continued, "after the entail is satisfied and my lands are secure, we will arrange a separation. You will travel abroad for your health, and you will be paid the sum of £10,000. £10,000! It was a king's ransom. It was a lifetime of security, of freedom. It was enough to never be at the mercy of a cruel mistress or a cold world again. "And if I refuse?" she whispered. The Duke's face darkened. "Then you are of no use to me. You are a liability. I can just as easily have you arrested for trespassing and the theft of Lady Beatrice's gown. You will be ruined, Miss Finch. You will end up in Newgate prison or on the streets. Your choice." He was a monster, a cold, calculating monster. But she was a survivor. She thought of her cold attic room, of the endless, petty humiliations of her life. She thought of the 18-hour days, the scraps of food, the constant fear of dismissal. Then she looked at the portrait. The woman with her face looked so sad. "What happened to her?" Rosamond asked, her voice quiet. "The real Genevieve. Do you even care?" Alistair's expression flickered. "She was my duty. Her whereabouts are my concern, not yours. Your concern is survival." He gestured around the opulent library. "This, or Newgate." Tears of rage and fear pricked her eyes, but she would not let them fall. She would not give him the satisfaction. She lifted her chin, meeting his icy gaze. "I will need a new wardrobe," she said, her voice shaking but firm. "If I am to be a lady, I must look the part, and I will not be your prisoner. I will have access to the grounds." Alistair Blackwood, the Duke of Ashworth, studied her for a long, silent moment. A spark of something, not approval, perhaps respect, lit his eyes. "Very well," he said. "Mr. Thorne, my secretary, will see to your needs. Your education begins in 1 hour." He turned to leave, then paused at the door. "Oh, and Miss Finch. Welcome home, Genevieve." The next 3 weeks were a blur of exquisite torture. Rosamond was a prisoner in a gilded cage. The Duke, Alistair, was a phantom. He was in the house, but she rarely saw him. He was busy in the city, holding his creditors at bay, projecting an aura of absolute calm, while his world was on the verge of collapse. Her keeper was Mr. Thorne. He was a small, precise man with wire-rimmed spectacles and a perpetually worried expression. He was, Rosamond learned, the only other person in the world who knew the truth. Her ladyship was quiet, Thorne explained, his hands fluttering over a stack of notes. They were in the morning room, a light-filled space that felt like a beautiful prison. She favored the pianoforte. She played. Adequately. "I do not play," Rosamond stated flatly. "A problem," Thorne muttered. "We will say you injured your wrist in the country, a fall from a horse. Did she ride?" "Poorly. She was afraid of horses." "I am not," Rosamond said, thinking of the few times her father had paid for her to ride a stable pony. "Good. That's a point in my favor." Thorne looked scandalized. "My dear Miss Finch, the goal is not to improve upon Lady Genevieve. It is to be her. You must be timid. You must be hesitant. You must fade into the wallpaper." "I am not a woman who fades, Mr. Thorne." "You must learn," he insisted, his face pale with stress. "The Dowager Duchess, His Grace's mother, is arriving from Kent this afternoon. She is not easily fooled." The Dowager Duchess, Lady Margaret Blackwood, arrived like a battleship. She was a tall, imposing woman in severe black silk, her white hair piled high, her eyes as sharp and blue as her son's. She swept into the drawing room where Rosamond, dressed in a pale blue day dress that Genevieve had left behind, waited like a lamb for slaughter. "Genevieve," the Duchess said, her voice clipped. She did not embrace her. She simply peered at her, her gaze raking over Rosamond from head to toe. "Your Grace," Rosamond said, sinking into the curtsy Thorne had drilled into her. "You look different," the Duchess said, her eyes narrowing. "It's the country air, I believe," Rosamond offered, her heart pounding a deafening rhythm against her ribs. "I feel much invigorated." "Invigorated," the Duchess repeated, as if the word were a piece of rotten fruit. "Genevieve, you have never been invigorated a day in your life. You have been indisposed, piqued, and suffering from a malaise. You have never been invigorated, and you've done something with your hair." Rosamond resisted the urge to touch the simple chignon. "It's just pinned up, Your Grace." "Humph. Well, sit. Don't hover." Rosamond sat. The Duchess interrogated her for an hour. She asked about her mother's health, about her time in the country, about her favorite watercolors. Rosamond relied on the thick binder of notes Mr. Thorne had compiled. She gave short, vague, timid answers. Finally, the Duchess stood up. "Alistair tells me you are recovered from your breakdown and are ready to proceed with the wedding." Rosamond blinked. "Breakdown? Your sudden flight from your parents' home, your refusal to correspond. Alistair has been managing the gossip, telling everyone you had a fit of nerves. Understandable, I suppose. He is a difficult man. But you are back, and that is what matters. The Ashworth line must be secured." She walked to the door, then paused. "Strangely, this invigoration suits you. You're less damp than I remember." When she was gone, Rosamond let out a breath she felt she'd been holding for an hour. Mr. Thorne peeked in from the hallway, mopping his brow. "A success, miss. A qualified success." But Rosamond felt a creeping dread. This was more than a simple deception. She was stealing a life. And she was discovering that the life she was stealing was a deeply unhappy one. That night, she couldn't sleep. The silk sheets felt like shackles. She prowled the room, her room, Genevieve's room, and her fingers brushed against a loose panel of an ornate wooden secretary desk. Curious, she worked her fingers behind it. A small hidden drawer sprang open. Inside was a small, leather-bound journal. Her hands trembled as she opened it. The handwriting was delicate, spidery, and filled with a desperate, looping terror. October 3rd. He found me. H knows. He says he has the letters. Father will be ruined. The shame will kill him. H says he is the only one who can help me. But his price is Ashworth. October 5th. I cannot tell Alistair. He is a hard man. He sees only duty. He would see this as a weakness in my line. He would not save me. He would simply replace me. H says I must do as he says. He wants me to break the engagement. October 8th. He is a monster. He said if I will not break the engagement, I must disappear. He says he will keep me safe until the deadline has passed. He says it is the only way to save my father. I am so afraid. I am going to the old cottage by the lake. He is arranging it. I have to trust him. I have no other choice. Rosamond's blood ran cold. H. Lord Harrington. Genevieve hadn't just run away. She was being blackmailed. She was a prisoner, just as Rosamond was. She slammed the journal shut, her mind racing. This wasn't a business arrangement. This was a conspiracy, and she was standing right in the middle of it. The next evening, the Duke informed her they would be attending the opera. "It is necessary," Alistair stated, standing in the doorway of her sitting room. He looked magnificent in his white tie and tails. "We must be seen. The world must be reminded that Lady Genevieve Warren is back in London and on my arm." "And what if I make a mistake?" Rosamond asked, her hands clenched. She was wearing one of Genevieve's gowns, a pale lavender silk that made her feel like a fragile doll. "What if I use the wrong fork or speak to someone I'm not meant to know?" "You will follow my lead," he said, his voice flat. "You will smile, you will nod, and you will say as little as possible. You are, after all, recovering from a nervous ailment." The Royal Opera House at Covent Garden was a glittering jewel box of crimson velvet and gold. Rosamond felt 1,000 eyes on her as Alistair led her to the prominent Ashworth box. The whispers were immediate. "That's her, Lady Genevieve. Looks rather well for a mad woman." Heard she tried to drown herself. Rosamond kept her chin high, her expression serene, just as Thorne had coached. She could feel Alistair's presence beside her, a solid wall of unyielding strength. During the first intermission, their box was flooded with visitors. Alistair handled them with curt, cool efficiency. Rosamond smiled and nodded, surviving on adrenaline. And then he appeared. "Your Grace." Lord Harrington entered the box, his smile wide and predator-slick. He was a handsome man, but his eyes were cold and black. "And Lady Genevieve, what a joy to see you returned to us. We were all so terribly worried." "Lord Harrington," Alistair said, his voice a blade of ice. "How good of you to call." Harrington took Rosamond's hand, his thumb brushing lightly over her knuckles. He did not kiss it. He held it, studying her. "You are looking transformed, my dear. The country has worked wonders." "Thank you, my lord," Rosamond said, her voice a small, breathy thing she hoped passed for timid. She gently extracted her hand. "I trust your father is well?" Harrington asked, his eyes glittering with malice. "I have not had business with him in some time." Rosamond's blood chilled. "He has the letters. This was the man from the diary." "He is, as well as can be expected," she murmured, lowering her gaze. "Excellent." Harrington smiled. "You know, I was just reminiscing with Lord Pemberton about that dreadful picnic last spring, the one where you were so terribly stung by a wasp. Your reaction was quite memorable. You fainted dead away into the trifle." Rosamond froze. This was a test, a memory she couldn't possibly have. Mr. Thorne had not mentioned a trifle. Alistair tensed beside her, but before he could intervene, Rosamond gave a weak laugh. "Oh, goodness," she said, pressing a hand to her temple. "My lord, you must forgive me. My physician says my episode has played havoc with my short-term memory. I barely recall this morning, let alone last spring." Harrington's smile faltered for a fraction of a second. Rosamond pressed her advantage, her voice trembling just enough. "In fact, I find all this excitement a little overwhelming. Alistair, my love," she said, turning to the Duke and placing a trembling hand on his arm. I think I need some air." Alistair looked down at her, his expression unreadable, but he covered her hand with his own. "Of course, my dear." He fixed Harrington with a look of pure dismissal. "Harrington, you will excuse us." He led her from the box, his hand warm and firm on hers. As soon as they were in the private corridor, Rosamond leaned against the wall, her legs shaking. "That was close," she breathed. "You did well," Alistair said. His voice was quiet, and for the first time it held a note of something other than command. He was still holding her hand. "He's the one," she said, looking up at him, her eyes wide with a new, shared fear. "He's the one who has her. I'm sure of it." Alistair's face hardened. "What do you mean?" I found her journal." "Hidden?" "She didn't run away, Alistair. She was being blackmailed by Harrington. He made her disappear. He's hiding her, waiting for your deadline to pass so he can ruin you." The Duke's hand tightened on hers, his knuckles turning white. He didn't look shocked. He looked confirmed. "I suspected as much," he said, his voice a low growl. "I knew he was buying my debts, but I couldn't find the leverage he had on the Warrens. The letters? It must be to do with her father's finances." He looked at Rosamond, and for the first time, he wasn't looking at a tool. He was looking at an ally. "He's playing a deep game. He set a trap, and you and I just walked right into it." "He was testing me," Rosamond whispered. "He suspects. He knows I'm not her." "No," Alistair said, his gaze intense. "He doesn't know. He's suspicious. Your answer was perfect. You've bought us time, but he will not stop. He will set more traps. He's a spider, and he's just felt the first tremor in his web." "What do we do?" she asked. "We play the game better than he does," the Duke replied. "We stop reacting, and we start hunting. We find out what those letters are, and we find out where he's holding Genevieve." He released her hand, but the warmth of his touch lingered. "The stakes just changed, Miss Finch. This is no longer just about my estate. It's about a woman's life, and it's about our survival." The house, once a prison, now felt like a fortress. An uneasy truce had formed between Rosamond and the Duke. They were co-conspirators, bound by a secret that was growing more dangerous by the day. Alistair dispatched Mr. Thorne to Genevieve's family seat under the guise of retrieving some of her forgotten belongings. His real mission? to search her father's study for any clue about the blackmail. Meanwhile, Alistair and Rosamond had to maintain the public charade. This meant dinners, a trip to Hyde Park in the Duke's gleaming carriage, and endless fittings for a wedding dress Rosamond felt was a shroud. The more she played the part of Genevieve, the more she disliked the woman she was pretending to be. Genevieve's letters, her diary, her simpering watercolour landscapes, they all painted a picture of a woman with no will of her own. She was terrified of him, Rosamond said one afternoon. She and Alistair were in the library, a room that had become their de facto war room. She held Genevieve's journal. She was terrified of Harrington, yes, but she was terrified of you too. Alistair looked up from a stack of ledgers, his expression dark. That is not my concern, isn't it? Rosamond pushed, emboldened by their new alliance. You call her your fiancée, but you describe her like a brood mare, a piece of the entail. You say she was your duty? Did you ever once speak to her? Truly speak to her? I spoke to her, as was appropriate for our station, he retorted, his voice clipped. Our marriage was a contract. Love was not a clause. Of course not, Rosamond shot back, her temper flaring. How could there be? You are the coldest man I have ever met. You sit here, moving your pieces around your board, but you never once considered what she wanted. No wonder she ran. You and Harrington are just two sides of the same coin. He trapped her with blackmail, and you trapped her with a loveless legal cage. Silence descended, heavy and absolute. Alistair stared at her, his face a mask of stone. She had gone too far. She had insulted him, the Duke, in his own home. He could still ruin her. He stood up, walking not to her, but to the window. He stared out at the rain-slicked London square. My father, he said, his back to her, was a romantic. He loved my mother to distraction. He also loved cards, horses, and disastrous investments. He loved her so much, he bankrupted this family. He left me with a mountain of debt, a crumbling legacy, and one single narrow path out, the entail. This archaic, hateful clause that tied my survival to the Warren family. He turned to face her, his eyes stripped of their icy armor. For the first time, she saw the man beneath the title, exhausted, burdened, and achingly human. Do you think I like being cold? He asked, his voice low and raw. Do you think I enjoy being a monster? Cold is what has kept my head above water. Cold is what has kept my tenants from being thrown off their land. Cold is what Harrington understands. I did not have the luxury of love, Miss Finch. I had only duty. Genevieve was that duty. And yes, she was timid, and she was weak. And I despised her for it. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of profound weariness. And then you danced with me. At the ball, I knew you were an imposter. I knew it the moment you spoke. You looked at me. No one has ever looked at me like that. Not with fear, not with deference. Just curiosity. And you weren't afraid. He took a step toward her. I brought you here to be a ghost, to be a placeholder, and instead, you are the most vibrant, infuriating, alive person who has ever set foot in this house. Rosamond's heart was hammering. This was more dangerous than Harrington. This was a truth that could destroy them both. I am not Genevieve, she whispered. No, he said, his voice hoarse. He was standing in front of her now, so close she could feel the heat radiating from him. You are not. He reached out, his fingers gently tracing the line of her jaw, a touch so tentative it ached. You are Rosamond, you are brave, and you have the worst timing of any woman I have ever met. The library door burst open. Mr. Thorne stumbled in, his clothes spattered with mud, his face ashen. "Your Grace," he gasped, clutching a small wax-sealed box. "I found it, hidden beneath a floorboard in Lord Warren's study. It's not just debts, it's correspondence." Alistair dropped his hand from Rosamond's face, the mask of the Duke snapping back into place. "Correspondence?" Thorne nodded, his hands shaking as he opened the box. "Letters, Your Grace. Between Lord Warren and St. Swithin's Foundling Hospital." Rosamond's blood went cold. "St. Swithin's?" "It seems, Your Grace," Thorne said, his voice barely a whisper as he read the top letter, "that the real Lady Genevieve Warren died of a fever 20 years ago, at the age of 2. Rosamond looked at Alistair, her mind catching on a single, horrifying detail from her own past. "St. Swithin's, that's where my father, my adoptive father, that's where he found me." Thorne pulled out a second set of papers. "And it seems Lord and Lady Warren, desperate to maintain their line and the connection to the Ashworth entail, adopted a replacement. An infant girl, from the very same Foundling Hospital." Alistair looked from the papers to Rosamond, the implication hitting him like a physical blow. Rosamond sank into a chair, the room spinning. "The painting, my face, the mole." She looked at Thorne. "The records. Is there a name?" "My name? Was there another?" Thorne shuffled the papers. 2 infants were given up by the same woman on the same day, miss. One was taken in by an artist, Mr. Finch. The other was given to the Warrens. The notes say they were twins." Rosamond looked up, her world fractured. "Genevieve, she's not just my double, she's my sister." The revelation hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Genevieve was her sister, her twin sister, a woman she'd never met, a woman whose unhappy life she had stolen was her own flesh and blood. "This changes everything," Rosamond said, her voice shaking. This was no longer a performance. It was a rescue. "Harrington isn't just holding a stranger, he's holding my sister." Alistair's face was grim. "It also means the entail is void. Genevieve is not a Warren by blood. My marriage to her would mean nothing." Harrington. Harrington must have discovered this. This is his blackmail. It's not just her father's debts, it's the fraud. He's threatening to expose the entire Warren family. "And ruin them," Rosamond finished. "That's why she ran, to protect the parents who raised her. She's protecting their secret." "And Harrington is hiding her until my deadline passes," Alistair concluded. "At which point, he can call in my debts. He wins. He gets Ashworth, and he holds the Warren family's ruin in his back pocket." "We have to find her," Rosamond insisted, rising from the chair. She was vibrating with a new, fierce energy. The fear was gone, replaced by a cold, sharp rage. "Thorne," Alistair commanded, "where did Genevieve say she was going in her journal?" "The old cottage by the lake, Your Grace," Thorne said, flipping through his notes. "At the Warren estate." "It's a trap," Alistair said immediately. Harrington would expect her to write that. He would have moved her. But he would have to hide her somewhere, Rosamond argued, pacing the library. Somewhere she wouldn't be recognized. Somewhere close, where he could control her. Not in the country. "In London," Alistair agreed. "Somewhere discreet." Rosamond stopped. A sanatorium, a private hospital. She was recovering from a nervous breakdown. It's the perfect cover. He could have her committed. He could be paying a doctor to keep her sedated, confused. Alistair's eyes lit with a grim fire. "Thorne, get me a list of every private sanatorium in and around London. Cross-reference it with any physicians known to be in Harrington's debt." The next 2 days were a frantic, secret search. Thorne, proving to be a master of espionage, returned with a name. Dr. Matthews's Retreat for Nervous Afflictions, in Richmond, highly exclusive. And Dr. Matthews, Thorne added, lost a fortune at a card table to Lord Harrington last month. That's it, Alistair said. That's where he has her. I'm going, Rosamond declared. Absolutely not, Alistair retorted. It's too dangerous. You cannot go, she argued, rounding on him. You are the Duke of Ashworth. Your presence would raise every alarm. And Thorne is a man. They won't let him into the women's ward. But me? She gestured to her face. I am Lady Genevieve Warren. I am her sister. I am the only person on earth who can walk in there and not be questioned. I will say I'm her cousin. That the resemblance is a family trait. I'll say I'm there to visit. Alistair looked at her, his jaw tight with conflict. He was a man who craved control, and she was asking him to surrender it. It is the only way, Alistair, she said, her voice soft but unyielding. You know it is. He finally gave a short, sharp nod. Thorne will go with you. He will wait in the carriage. If you are not out in 1 hour, he is to fetch me. I will be at my club. I will bring friends. We will tear the place down if we have to. Dr. Matthews's Retreat was a beautiful brick house set in sprawling gardens, looking more like a country hotel than an asylum. But the windows had subtle iron bars, and the front door was operated by a heavy-looking attendant. Rosamond, dressed in a modest but wealthy-looking travelling suit, her face hidden by a veil, approached the desk. I am here to see Lady Genevieve Warren, she said, her voice cool. I am her cousin, Miss Finch. The attendant looked surprised. Lady Warren is not receiving visitors. Doctor's orders. And my orders, Rosamond said, channeling the Dowager Duchess, are to see her. Do not make me speak to Dr. Matthews about your impertinence. The attendant, cowed by her tone, stammered and led her down a long, white corridor that smelled of lavender and bleach. He unlocked a heavy door. She is not herself, miss. Be prepared. The room was small but comfortable, and sitting in a chair by the window, staring blankly at the garden, was a woman. Rosamond's breath caught. It was like looking into a mirror, but a warped, broken one. This was Genevieve. She was thinner, her skin pale, her eyes wide and vacant. She was wearing a simple white wrapper, her identical brown hair hanging lank around her shoulders. Genevieve, Rosamond whispered. The woman turned, her eyes slowly focusing. They widened in absolute, abject terror. No, go away. He sent you. Another trick. No, Rosamond said, walking slowly into the room. She locked the door behind her and pulled off her veil. Genevieve screamed, scrambling back against the wall. Who are you? What is this? My name is Rosamond, she said, holding up her hands. I'm not here to hurt you. Look at me. Please, just look. She touched the small mole below her ear. I have one too. Genevieve stopped screaming, her breath hitching in sobs. She stared, her mind clearly struggling through a fog of laudanum. We look the same, Genevieve whispered. We are twins, Genevieve, Rosamond said, her own tears starting to fall. We were separated at birth. I was raised by a man named Finch. You were raised by the Warrens. Their real daughter died. Genevieve just stared, shaking her head in disbelief. Harrington has been blackmailing you, Rosamond continued, speaking quickly. He's using the secret of your adoption to ruin Alistair, to ruin the Duke. At his name, Genevieve flinched. The Duke. He's a hard man. He knows, Rosamond said. He knows everything. And he is not the man you think he is. He is trying to save you. We are trying to save you. Save me." Genevieve's eyes filled with a desperate hope. "Harrington, he said he would tell everyone that my father would go to prison. He won't. We have the proof. But we have to go. Now." Rosamond grabbed a cloak from the wardrobe and threw it around her sister's shoulders. "The wedding is in 2 days. That's Harrington's deadline. He's planning something." "The ball," Genevieve whispered, her mind clearing. Dr. Matthews told me. Harrington is coming tomorrow. He's moving me. He said I had to be at the Duke's engagement ball. He said he was going to present me as proof of the Duke's fraud." Rosamond's blood ran cold. He wasn't just going to let the deadline pass. He was planning a public, devastating execution. "He's going to expose us all," Rosamond said. "The Duke, the Warrens, and you, and me." She grabbed her sister's arm. "No, we're not going to let that happen. We're going to use his own plan against him." The Ashworth ballroom was a sea of glittering diamonds and old money. It was the night of the engagement ball, the night before the supposed wedding. The air was electric with gossip, the orchestra playing a vibrant Strauss waltz. Rosamond stood at the top of the grand staircase, her hand on Alistair's arm. She was wearing the Ashworth wedding gown. It was a masterpiece of ivory satin and seed pearls, and it felt like armor. She had never been more terrified, or more alive. "He's here," Alistair murmured, his eyes scanning the crowd. "In the corner, by the French doors." Rosamond saw him. Lord Harrington, smiling, accepting a glass of champagne, his eyes fixed on them. He looked like a wolf who had cornered his prey. "And her?" Alistair asked. "She's with Thorne, in the north drawing room. She's terrified, but she's ready." They descended the stairs, a perfect, false couple. The crowd parted for them. They were the center of the universe. "My dear," Harrington said, stepping forward, his voice booming for all to hear. "You look radiant, a true vision." "Lord Harrington," Rosamond said, her voice clear and strong, not the whisper of Genevieve. "Alistair," Harrington said, turning to the Duke, "a word. In celebration of your success. I believe I have an engagement present for you. A surprise, you might say." "Oh, I doubt you could surprise me, Harrington," Alistair replied, his voice dangerously smooth. "Don't be so certain." Harrington raised his hand. "I believe you are celebrating an engagement to Lady Genevieve Warren. But I must ask, Your Grace." "Which one?" The music stopped. A collective gasp rippled through the ballroom. 2 men entered, and between them, stumbling and pale, was Genevieve. She was dressed in the simple white wrapper from the sanatorium, her hair wild, her eyes wide with terror. "This," Harrington declared, pointing to the real Genevieve, "is Lady Genevieve Warren, driven mad and hidden away by her cruel fiancé." He then turned, his finger stabbing toward Rosamond. "And this is an impostor, a fraud, a common gutter girl he has hired to steal his estate. He is a liar and a cheat, and his entail is void." The ballroom exploded. The Dowager Duchess, Margaret, grasped her chest, her face pale. Alistair Blackwood didn't move. He simply looked at Harrington with an expression of profound boredom. "Are you quite finished, Harrington?" the Duke asked. He then turned to the crowd. "Lord Harrington is, in fact, correct about one thing. This woman," he gestured to Rosamond, "is not Lady Genevieve Warren." The whispers became a roar. Rosamond's hand tightened on his arm, but she kept her chin high. "And this woman," Alistair continued, pointing to the trembling Genevieve, "is indeed the true Lady Genevieve. But she was not hidden by me. She was imprisoned by Lord Harrington." "Lies!" Harrington roared. "Was she?" Alistair countered. He nodded to Mr. Thorne, who stepped forward, handing a packet of letters to the Dowager Duchess. These letters, procured from Lord Harrington's physician, Dr. Matthews, detail the treatments, heavy laudanum and isolation, ordered and paid for by Harrington, to keep Lady Genevieve quiet until my marriage deadline passed. The Dowager's eyes scanned the page. This is monstrous. But why? A lord near the front asked. Because, Rosamond said, her voice ringing out, clear and true, silencing the room. Lord Harrington discovered the truth, a truth my sister was hiding to protect her family. She let go of Alistair's arm and walked down the steps, across the marble floor, until she stood directly in front of her twin. She took Genevieve's shaking hands. "Tell them, Genevieve," she said, her voice soft but strong. "You don't have to be afraid anymore." Genevieve looked at Harrington, who was white with rage. Then she looked at her sister's brave, steady face, and she found her voice. "I am not a Warren by blood," Genevieve said, her voice trembling but gaining strength. Our real mother left us at St. Swithin's Foundling Hospital. The Warrens. They adopted me after their daughter died. Lord Harrington found the letters. He blackmailed me. He said he would ruin my father. He made me disappear. The crowd turned as one to Harrington. He was ruined, disgraced, finished. "Get out," Alistair said, his voice a low command. "Get out of my house." Harrington, his face a mask of hate, turned and fled. The ballroom was silent, everyone watching the two women who looked like reflections. Alistair walked down and stood beside Rosamond. He addressed the crowd, but his eyes were on her. "The Ashworth entail," he said, "is indeed void. My engagement to Lady Genevieve is, and always was, based on a fraud. Therefore, the engagement is broken." Rosamond's heart sank. It was over. He was free. His lands were forfeit, but his honor was intact. And she was free, too. "The Ashworth estate," Alistair continued, "will likely be seized by the Crown. I am, as of this moment, a man of no standing and no property." He turned to Rosamond. He didn't see the crowd. He didn't see the shocked faces. He only saw her. "But," he said, his voice, for the first time, full of undisguised warmth, "a man with no property is, for the first time in his life, free to make his own choice." He went down on one knee. On the marble floor of the ballroom, in front of all of society, the ruined Duke of Ashworth took the hand of the penniless companion. "Miss Rosamond Finch," he said, his voice breaking with an emotion she never thought him capable of. "You are the bravest, most infuriating, and most magnificent woman I have ever known. You are not my duty. You are my choice. Will you do me the honor of marrying a poor man?" Rosamond looked at her sister, who was smiling through her tears. She looked at the Dowager Duchess, who was dabbing her eyes, and she looked at Alistair. "I have never," she said, her own tears falling, "wanted to marry a rich one." She pulled him to his feet. "Yes, Alistair. Yes, I will." And as he kissed her, the Ashworth ballroom, for the first time in a century, erupted in genuine heartfelt applause. They say the Blackwood family lost everything that night, but they were wrong. Alistair, it turned out, was a brilliant man. When he wasn't shackled by archaic laws, he used his last remaining funds to invest in new, real-world ventures, railways and shipping, and Rosamond, with her practical, sharp mind, was his partner in everything. They rebuilt their fortune, not on a name, but on their own wits. Lady Genevieve, free from her secrets, found her own voice. She refused a society match, instead finding love with a kind doctor who valued her for who she truly was. The sisters, united at last, became inseparable. The Ashworth estate? It was eventually bought back, not by an entail, but by a duke and duchess who had earned it, and who filled its halls with love, not just duty. Thank you for listening to this story. What do you think of Rosamond's choice? Would you have been brave enough to take her place? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Your stories and feedback are what bring this channel to life. If you enjoyed this journey of drama and romance, please hit that like button. Share this video with a friend who loves a good twist, and be sure to subscribe and ring that bell. We have so many more stories to tell, and you won't want to miss a single one.